Welcome to Current Situation, your Palmetto State political pulse. I'm your host, Joshua Gale, alongside South Carolina State House Representative Jordan Pace. Every week, our goal is to help you navigate the complex world of politics through biblically conservative perspectives. Before we jump into today's conversation, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. Hey, it's Josh from the band Gale. We are excited to share with you that our newest single called I Still Do comes out on March 14th on all major platforms.
And I still agree with young me.
Welcome to episode 27 of the Current Situation podcast. Today, Jordan and I are joined by Reverend Lathan Carey, founder and head of school at Crown Leadership Academy here in the Charleston area, metropolitan area, with campuses in North Charleston and Mount Pleasant. Grateful to have Lathan. I've known Lathan for several years. And today we have Lathan on because we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to the school choice bill that's presented to us here again in 2025. If you want some history of the school choice bill and what we've discussed before, you can go back to episode 13 of the Current Situation podcast. In that episode, Jordan and I discussed the school choice bill, its implications. We gave some more background information on the bill, where it stood then, the history, the ongoing lawsuits against it, and what, and the South Carolina Supreme Court. We explained the expansion of the program, the removal of income caps for families. We also discussed the benefits of school choice that we're going to explore some more today, and how this is going to improve educational outcomes here in South Carolina, which we desperately need. Today we're going to jump into the future of the education bill and the future of education here in South Carolina. With that, Jordan, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you to give us the South Carolina House perspective on this and give us a quick update, and then we'll let you ask for Lathan's perspective.
Sure. So the situation with S62, which is the Senate bill passed early in the session last month. I think that's when it passed in February. It changed the funding mechanism to basically take it from, rather than general funds, tax dollars, it took it from lottery money instead. There was some highly questionableness about whether that was sustainable or legal. So the House changed that back to general funds money. And when the state lost the lawsuit last year and last fall, when the whole structure was challenged in court, the Blaine Amendment in the Constitution, which we talked about in episode 13, trumped it. Right. Well, it was a split decision with the Supreme Court. The now Chief Justice Kitteridge, wrote the dissent in that case, the disagreement. And in that dissent, he laid out a potential plan to make the bill constitutional. So the House took that advice, set up what's called a statutory trust to hold that money, so it doesn't go directly from the state to the schools. And over the course of 3 years, all the income caps, not the income tax, we want to get rid of that too, but the income caps would go away, and the money would then follow the students regardless of the parents' incomes. So that's what the House is basically, in a nutshell, sent it over to the Senate, and they can either concur, which is agree, in which case it would go straight to the governor. They can non-concur, which is probably go to a conference committee and try to work things out. Or they can amend it again because it's a Senate bill, so they can take another crack at it. I don't know which one they're going to do. They've been busy with other stuff this past week. They could take it up as early as next week. We'll see. So that's kind of where we're at legislatively. What we love, Lathan, to hear from your perspective on practically, how could this help the education landscape in the state of South Carolina?
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I really enjoy your podcast, and I encourage anyone to go ahead and listen to it, follow it, subscribe, all the important words to get it going. And, we kind of, especially as conservatives, know what's happening on a national level. and we kind of ignore what's happening in South Carolina and just, oh, we're a red state, we're conservative, we're going to be fine. But we need to get involved at this grassroots level. As a
Amen.
practical matter, I think where people want to point to are the dollars. And to me, money is not the principal thing here. Money is a measuring stick that we can use to diagnose issues. So what that points to me, though, is that there's a power imbalance. And the power imbalance is this: the control is all in the state's hands, and none of it is in the parents' hands. When we started Crown, we based this off of Luke 2:52, where it says, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with man and favor with God. And in scripture, it says that Jesus' family moved to Egypt. We know about the first 2 years of his life. Then the next thing we know, he's 12 in the temple. So we don't get any picture of how Jesus was raised, but he's God's son, and God gave him to two human beings to educate. And it says he grew in wisdom, stature, favor with man, favor with God. So wisdom is your academic decision-making, not just knowledge. We don't want to confuse education with just knowledge. Secondly is he grew physically and need to learn how to manage his physical body. Third, he grew in favor with God. That's your spiritual, moral aspect. And, as an aside, a lot of public education has said no spiritual aspect at all, but in reality, that void has to be filled by something. And it's usually not filled by a Christian worldview at all, or a biblical worldview. And lastly, favor with man. We equate that to emotional social learning. So my principle is this: we live in a country that's free. We have citizens, and God chooses to give children to these parents. And yet we say to the state, you take over what you think is best for this child. I can't think of another area in life, and I'm sure there are others, and I'm just ignorant of them, where we give all power to the state and there's no recourse, and it's simply based on where you live. There is nothing a parent can do. Now, if they have means, they're independently wealthy and able, they can pay for a private school tuition if there is an affordable private school in their area. If they can't, they're trapped. And now the simple comeback is, well, move out of the area. Well, it's very hard to move. Your job, your what's on the market like with inflation, it's very difficult.
Interest rates.
Yeah, it's all there. And so really the goal of all of that from the state's point of view is to control everything. So they can, a parent has no recourse, and it's very difficult as a parent. This is, if we talk to parents, the thing in the world that's the most important to them is not going to be their possessions. It's that son or daughter. And I just have to hand them over to the state because of where I live. I can try and object, but if the school board votes against it, or if a certain teacher doesn't like my kid, I can't do anything. And to say that, okay, well, you guys can go to private school, you then trap a large segment of the population. They become serfs. It's almost a feudal system, really.
And it's what, more than 90% of students are in government school. It's not like a small amount.
No, not at all. And so they control all aspects of education. They don't have to control 100%, but they control such a large amount. It influences everything. It's a straight up monopoly.
Yeah.
And it's my child's life.
Yeah. So obviously, if these vouchers or ESAs or ETSF, whatever the acronym we're using, this school choice program, if it were to come into effect into law, $7,000 per student, how could that help change the dynamic of that monopoly?
Well, the first thing, it would let parents have a choice. They could deny a school. Think about that. They could say, I'm not going to your school. In the private sector, we host tours, we communicate with parents. We are trying to sell ourselves to the parents, and the parents can shop for a school like they shop for anything else. And then they have those dollars that follow the student, managed by a trustee, I believe, and they pick the school, and the dollars follow the student. even with regulation, parent doesn't have to wait for next year to see the test results come out, or when their child admits to the therapist what's going on or whatever. They can see their child gets in the car that afternoon and has had an issue. They can email me or call the school right away, and I am amenable to them. They're not serving the state. I'm serving them. It changes the whole power dynamic. And then you'll have variety of choice and options. Not all children are the same. And we know this at Crown. We want to specialize in critical thinking, problem solving, but each child is unique. So we ask the Lord, send us the students you have for us right now. And we love that. But in a few years, Johnny, he may change a little bit, and that school down the road might be better for him. So children aren't the same from age 5 to age 18. This allows people to move around with what's best for what they see their child needs.
Right. One of the criticisms that we got, I guess philosophically, when we brought these ideas up, was that if we had the money follow the student, that would increase the cost of private schools. They would see this massive inflation in private school costs. Do you think that's a fair assessment, and if not, how is it not a fair criticism?
Well, I can talk for us. We are not planning to raise tuition rates based on the amount of money that comes in. We're still going to educate with what we see as necessary, because we work on a value-based system. This is valuable, and this is what the value is. Now, that to me is a criticism of the marketplace more than anything. So if these funds become available, then you're going to see more schools pop up, and you're going to engender competition. And so the prices, they may have a short-term increase depending on what schools do in the area, but I don't think that'll be dramatically more than inflation or cost of living. But eventually they're going to come down. And in Charleston, we have so much competition. I was sitting with a group of head of schools today, and we were talking about our tuition increases and that. And everybody knows everybody else's prices, and all the parents know. And when you're the shopper, you're going and saying, how much is this going to cost me? At a public school, it's not going to cost you anything, so you don't ask. So you're not even in the game of how much does this cost. When you get to decide where that money goes, you have the power. You're going to want to know. And so schools are going to have to justify their tuition rate.
Right. Yeah. Great.
Well, there's some irony in that. It doesn't cost you anything, but it costs you everything. And it does cost every single taxpayer. I just got my truck taxes back. I've got an older truck. I tell myself I always get a new truck when the other one dies. I've got a Chevrolet Silverado that will not die. But in my taxes, I'm paying for South Carolina education debt. I'm paying for education. I'm paying for all sorts of different things, and it's all line itemed in my tax bill there. But it costs you everything, because you're going to send your student to Rome, and they're going to look like a Roman. And we know that in capitalism, competition is great. Competition is what allows us to grow and become better. And so, Lathan, if you could explain to us, let's see, a little bit more about wisdom, because obviously we have more education here in the United States than we've ever had before, but we lack so much wisdom here in 2025. You want to speak into that a little bit more, and just kind of some feedback from parents on this, and then what you would want to explain to parents about what the next coming years can look like, as far as if this takes effect.
Mhm. Well, for me, wisdom is the principal thing, as Proverbs said. And it starts with the fear of the Lord. And we can ask the Lord for wisdom, and we get wisdom from his word following it. So wisdom is not knowledge. Knowledge is just putting in information to a processor, which is a human being. And then the human being decides what to do with that. But we're not computers, we're human beings. So we have a moral framework in each of us that takes in knowledge and then makes decisions based on that knowledge. That is wisdom or lack of wisdom. In Proverbs, you're described as wise, or you're described as a fool. It's all throughout there. So for me, where that comes down to, when we started Crown, we realized we got a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. They do well on standardized tests. They can answer those. They have a high GPA. And yet, to us in the world, the smartest people who we are supposed to emulate and lift up and worship at the altar of knowledge, especially in Western culture, are making the dumbest, stupidest decisions ever. And then they're like, hey, look at that. Well, everyone said, the consensus said, or the science said, but there's no wisdom to it. So when we were working with colleges and saying, what do you need from students? They were saying, College of Charleston, the honors college, was telling us, we get some of the best students in the country here, not only from the South, but from the Northeast. They want a good education, but they want the warmer weather. So they send them to College at Charleston. These kids have a high GPA at the honors college, mind you. They've done everything right in high school. They get down here and they don't know how to govern their lives. And so it's a mess. So the first year of college becomes freshman orientation, how to study. Not because the kids don't know how to study, but they don't know how to manage their free time at all. So yes, I can do calculus. I can't manage my drinking habit. I can do high level chemistry. I can't show up on time for class. So what we do at Crown is we saw that. So we provide a high level education that gets students into whatever college they're looking to get into. But we base it on a college schedule in middle and high school so they learn how to govern their time. You know, one of the fruit of the spirit, the ninth one, is self-control. I think it's the last one because it's the hardest one to really master. And so that's what we do at Crown. And we tell our parents that. And, you know, when we sell our school, we say, yes, it does cost a little bit now. But man, you want your kid to go to college, and the national average is it's taking most students 5 years to complete a 4-year degree right now because a year is wasted. And we're a lot cheaper than 1 year of college, you know, or anything else. A lot of students go and they flame out. They're even high achieving, high learning students. They're just not used to managing themselves. So to me, that's wisdom.
Yeah, I read a really good book last year called God's Paideia by Doug Wilson, which kind of touched on that. I listened to his audiobook, but the difference between just information and wisdom, and like how education used to be prior to government taking it over, was about teaching people how to, like teaching kids how to learn, not necessarily just saying, here's a bunch of facts, remember these facts for this test later, and how that shifted with the the enlightenment of scientific scientism taking over versus the church and that sort of thing. Basically, as government's taken over school, that's where the big shift has been. Have you seen at Crown Academy, like, do you have any anecdotes you can share with us about either students or teachers that have come from government school and did not have a good experience, and how their experience has been better outside of government school?
Yeah, I absolutely can. Uh, so usually what that entails on one side, it's that they didn't have an good experience at their government school, whether they were bullied or they're in a classroom of 30 or something like that, but they have no other option. And then when they became financially able, they were able to choose another option. What parents tell us the number one thing for them is class sizes. And then secondly, that their child is known. The topic we get the most is that my child's in a classroom of 30, they get lost. Usually the teacher is putting out metaphorical fires in the classroom. So the kids are just left and they feel alone. They don't feel like they can advocate and talk to themselves. One of the things we specialize in at Crown is we're creating leaders, and leaders have to figure out the problem, address the problem, and then lead others to solve it, collaboration. Well, in a government school, there's so many kids, a child can't even speak up. And how do I organize all of this? And there's a multiplying effect with groups. Even if you have a teaching assistant in there, it's a lot different teaching 30 than 12. It exponentially grows the larger the crowd, groupthink, crowd dynamics, and that it doesn't matter how many adults you put in there. Once you reach a certain threshold point, there's a reason Jesus had 12 disciples. It's a real good number.
Yeah, absolutely. I coach a lot of public school students in Dixie, baseball, right? Little League baseball. And every year, their parents come up to me and say, Johnny was so nervous that no one would like him. No one would want to be friends with him. No one would care. No one would know him. No one would, all these things. And creating a culture around that with 11 or 12 boys. I, have created some incredible friendships with parents and these children who really have a lot of respect for me. Um, but they carry these fears from what they experience at school all day long. And their hope is that baseball is going to alleviate or be different than what they experience in the classroom. Because I see that. I can read children. I can see their parents' hopes that, gosh, I hope this is different. Because I'm
Yeah.
tired, of dealing with this. So many conversations about that, and interacting with these children.
I can tell you a story about one of my children, my son. He graduated from Crown. He went to the College of Charleston, the honors college, and he's in the bank world now. Math was his favorite. English was his least favorite. He got into the English honors class, and he knew how to approach English work. He knew the time schedule. He knew when things were due. He knew how to follow directions. He knew how to research. He knew how to ask the teacher questions. He knew how, in a classroom of maybe 40 or 50, to put himself front and center in the teacher's vision. So they were assigned a term paper. He did it. The teacher gets up and hands them all back, and the teacher's angry and says, no one followed direction. No one did what I said. In fact, everyone in the class did not get a grade higher than a C. You need to redo it, relook at my directions, and don't come to me and ask questions. And then the teacher looked at my son Duncan and said, actually, he's the only one who got an A. If you have questions, you go ask him. And Duncan was just like, whoa, I did that well. And he didn't think he was a great English student. There were other students in Crown who he thought were better than him. And yet he knew the way to learn and how to approach learning rather than just regurgitating information or facts.
And he's now what, at Chapel Hill?
No, that Duncan's
That's
in
right.
the bank world. My other son is earning his master's, his PhD in math at Chapel Hill as a 23-year-old.
Wow.
Cool.
That's incredible. Great school.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have, Lathan?
I have 5.
5. Okay, you've one up me. Love
Well, we're done. You still have time.
I don't know about that. So, and then South Carolina, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what you're putting out at Crown. South Carolina as a whole, I take a lot of pride in this state, and we're 12th worst in literacy in the United States. And I interact with people all around the country. I come from the great state of Texas. Got friends all around the country, and South Carolina. We have a certain reputation when it comes to education, that I don't like. And so I look forward to competition. I look forward to something has to change in our education system here in South Carolina. We cannot have pockets of great school districts here and there, leaving everybody else left, and I will not say no student left behind, because that didn't work either. That was the era I grew up in. And thank you, Barbara Bush. But Jordan, go ahead.
I was going to ask, we hear a lot about students whenever this subject comes up. Like, that's primarily who gets talked about is the students and student outcomes, which is, the priority. Teachers also come up too. How would creating more of a competitive marketplace for teachers employment, like, how would that help them? Because a lot of times the other side of this argument always says, this is going to hurt teachers, and it's going to decrease pay. And full disclosure, Lathan, I taught in a private school for about 3 years, and I had lots of these conversations with a lot of my colleagues, most of which came from government school. But I'm curious to hear your take of, why do these teachers come from government school, take a huge pay cut most of the time to teach in private schools?
We are actually talking about this with other head of schools, and I'm part of the South Carolina Independent School Association, SCISA. The number one reason why surveys have said that teachers leave the public sector is parents, which we can understand because you're dealing with the segment of the population, as I've already said, and parents who have no say so. So they feel frustrated, powerless, and that's going to erupt somewhere. And the easiest target is the teacher. So that's part of it. But mainly, they don't feel valued. So they're willing to take significant pay cuts to come teach at a private school because they feel valued at a private school. They feel like they're really making an impact on individual lives, which is what teachers want to do. They're gifted by God to do that, and their hands are tied and they're not allowed. Now, if school choice goes forward, there will be a more level playing field. There'll be more competition. And I would expect, and I'm planning, that teacher salaries at private school would go up. Often, Jordan, when they talk about, this will help teachers here in the public, well, teachers at private schools are people too. And they're already sacrificing a lot and doing a lot. And they drive long distances where I'm located. It would help them tremendously. It would also help the rural situation where there are fewer private schools. But if they're able to increase the salary that they're paying, they would have more people move there. A lot of teachers out of school are having to go to locations because that's where the most salary is provided to pay off their student loans, which don't get me started about the cost of college right now. But this would help them move and live in more rural areas because the salary is increased.
Yeah.
And I also think, Jordan, it's important to say here that private schools are making it right now without any help. That this is not, we're desperate for money or we're searching for it or anything like that. We're sacrificing and doing this for the true nature of we want to educate children. We want to mentor children and help equip them for why God created them. It's not a monetary choice at all. It's a calling. And this would only help teachers. And it would, teachers, both public and private, we're losing them. Fewer teachers are getting education degrees and coming into the education sector. They don't feel it's a career that's valued at all for many different reasons. And this would help us really reach out to people who might have left the sector and come back. We often get stories of people, as some of our teachers, they've been in other careers, they've almost retired and said, now I want to, and we've been told this by our teachers, now I want to do something with my life.
That's very good. That's echoes a lot of what my colleagues shared with when I asked them that same question.
So, Jordan, tell us, what is the future of this bill? I know we're expecting another lawsuit here, and once we're moving through here on the South Carolina Supreme Court. What is the future of this? What can constituents and listeners do when calling their state senator? Kind of give us that rundown of what we can and what it is moving forward.
Yeah, so like I said, it's in the Senate. It's up to them now. The ball's in their court. What I would suggest that folks do is call their senator, and frankly, call your House member too, and tell them, because it's going to come back to us if they do anything but concur. It'll come back to the House. Call your senator and your House member. Tell them simple message: we want universal school choice, the most open and parent controlled way possible. So right now, this is this trust fund, the vouchers. We've also talked about a refundable tax credit. That's my preference. I wrote the bill to do that, which is what Oklahoma has. I'd love to put them together and give people the ultimate choice of, you can take the vouchers up front, which have a little bit more, regulated controls on them, or you can take a tax credit. Oh, it's going to tax credit when you file your taxes, and have to work that out with the school and how you pay that from month to month until you get that money. To me, that would be the best option. But the message I would say to folks is, call your legislator and tell them you want the most universal school choice bill you can possibly get, is the simple message.
Awesome. All right. Well, Lathan, we really appreciate you coming here on the current situation. Is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with today in regards to education?
What I'd like to say is I'd like to just talk to parents for a second. That son or daughter of yours was given to you. You know in your heart the Lord is going to talk to you about your child. Don't be bullied or forced into situations that you don't think are tenable. At Crown here, we say we partner with the parents. We are not in charge of education. We are serving your child. Your child is unique. We want to know your child. And we think children are a gift from God. Every single one of them that should be known and understood and trained up in the way they should go. So that doesn't just mean their morality or know what's right and wrong, but it means we as educators, along with the parents, we can see this child is excellent at this. This child has gifts and traits in this way. Maybe that is why God created them. How can we equip them so that they can fulfill their purpose, working with the parents instead of this almost competition with the parents? That's not at all the way it should be.